Now the next thing we're gonna do is that our cracks right now are really sharp, and to be honest I don't really like that, so I'm just gonna use an HQ blur. Yes, I'm gonna blur this with high quality, and I'm gonna give it a really low number. I just want to have a little bit of blur, not that much. Let's go 0.5, not enough, 8, that starts to be a little better. And let's use a level just to control a little bit this. There we go. So now our cracks are looking way better, yes? And we see that they are everywhere. Now remember that we can use our histogram to make it tile so they look more aligned to what we have on our tiles, the size of our tiles. If our tiles are of this size, maybe we will need some cracks of this size as well, instead of having cracks that are really small. It really depends on the surface that we are working on. So depending the surface we work on, the cracks are going to have different sizing and scaling. So what I'm going to do next, yes, is I'm going to just keep on detailing my cracks. So cracks usually are not regular. They have irregularities, yes? I'm going to start to wield that irregularities. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get another slope blur. There we go. And I'm going to use another clouds too, in this case. I'm going to make resorter and random seed. And I'm going to plug it to my slope. Now, in this case, yes, I want my slope to have a really low intensity because as you can see, it's super destroying my major cracks. So I'm going to go really low, like 0.01. Yes, and it's gonna give me more or less this result. Now, for those who don't remember, if you use the min mode on the slope blur, what this will do is start to get, oh, too much. It's gonna start to push the edges of your shape inwards. Yes. If you set it to max, it's gonna go the other way around and it's gonna push it outwards. Yes. As you can see, this is going to give us different results depending on what we want to do. Yeah. So let's go 0.05 again. This is going to give us a little bit more of variation. Now if you go to blur, we're going to have a variation of both of them, which is actually quite nice. If I change this to back here, it's just going to be a little bit sharper, but that's not what we want right now. So let's go to 5 maybe. Yes, I want some variation, but I don't want it to be so much. Or maybe just go with min 0.05. We can go harder on this one. So now you're gonna have a little more variation in your cracks. You see how it's not regular everywhere, like we have really white here and then it starts to have a wiggle with some gradients on the middle. Let's change the shape and take a big look to this. I'm gonna see if it's looking really good or not. That's great. And in fact we can actually control this pretty good with the edge width. Oh, went too far. Let me check this. Oh, let's do 9.1. This should actually make a change. So we can, as you can see, we can control the size of these cracks and how it affects our material as well. Maybe something more like this. Small gradient. Yeah, that's looking better now. So now we have our cracks, but I've been feeling a little bit technical today. So I want to show you how you can actually turn this into something that might be useful for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get here, yes, a flat fill. And with this flat fill, what I'm going to do, yes, is I'm gonna create two masks that's gonna allow us to create more randomized, yes, values in our cracks and where to appear. Now, who doesn't know what the flat fill node is? Because before I move forward, it's important that you know what it does and what it is used for. Yes, if not, you're not going to understand the next steps. Does anyone has any doubts about the flat fill? You can just write it on the chat or unmute yourself. If not, I'm just gonna move forward. Okay.
You can explain it to me because I don't know what.
Okay. Okay, it's perfect. So the flat fill. No, you're welcome. So the flat fill is a specific node, or let's call it, it's a magic node. So what it does, it has a grayscale input. Yes. Remember that in Designer we have two types of information. We have color input that is represented with the yellow dot. And we have grayscale input that is represented with the grayscale dot. Now, when we work on our height map, yes, or normal information as well, or ambient occlusion, we're working with grayscale information, yes. That is what you see here, values between 1 and 0. Now the flat fill, what it does, it takes the information from a grayscale map and it reads each specific shape that has a distance of 1 pixel. So your shapes, in order to be read correctly, should have a distance of 1 pixel. Yes, what you are seeing right now here is good rate of information because it's actually giving me the right colors. If I change this to the blur, you're gonna see that I'm gonna get this weird image, which is actually bad. Yeah. So when it reads, once the flat fill reads the information, it's going to assign to each shape a specific color that is based on the 2D coordinates. So it's go from red, green, and yellow, and we have a black around here. So once we have that information, yes, Substance Designer allows us to create different nodes that will allow us for more detail. Like for example, the flat fill to random color. So this node, what it does, it reads the flat fill and assigns a different and random color to each shape of your input. So what I can do with this is use another node called Vector Warp Grayscale. Now this works exactly as the directional warp, yes. So the directional warp, in case you don't know, for those who are new, it basically warps everything in a specific direction based on the intensity input map that we set, which in this case is the clouds 2. So Vector Warp Grayscale does exactly the same, with the only difference that it uses vector information. Yes, and by vector information in this case we are talking about color information. So I'm gonna show you two tricks. So first is that we are using different colors, so each color has a value, each color has a vector. So basically if we plug this in, our cracks are not gonna tile anymore. What do you mean? That each of our tiles is gonna have a different crack and it's not gonna be consecutive to the next tile that we have next to, as long as we are not using the same color for each of them. If I really go down on my crack size, you're gonna see that right now there's not many of them that are actually going together, except those who have exactly the same color. And I can change the vector warp, yes, random color, to get different results. Now this works actually really good, and it has some secrets behind it, but we're not going to talk about that today. So we're going to get this here, yes, because we want this. And what we're going to do next, now place this around here, delete this. What we're going to do next basically is we're going to start to mask our tiles so we know where we want them to appear. Yes, I'm going to choose where we want them to appear. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you two ways of doing it. So first is, if we are already using the flat fill to random color, you can turn this into grayscale information by using the grayscale conversion. Now as you can see, now everything has turned to grayscale. And let me explain you a little bit about this technique. So this is a uniform color, yes, and it allows me to pick any kind of color. As you can see, every color, yes, has different channels, and I'm gonna make this big so I can explain. So this is my 2D viewport, yes. In here you are seeing the actual image I am editing. So every image that has color has different channels. It has red, green, blue, and also has the alpha. Now if you go down here to these three layers you see, you can actually choose every one of these colors. You can go for red, green, and blue. So basically each of these channels is actually grayscale information that when you combine them they show you a color, yes. And right now we have the red color. Yes, so if I click here and I just choose the red color, you're gonna see that we're gonna have a white color, and that's because we are using red. Now if I change to green, it's gonna be almost black. If I change to blue, it's gonna be basically the same, and that's because again we're using red, so that this channel has a number one information. Taking that in consideration, yes, this means that every color has also a value, meaning an intensity, and it's this. Yes, can you see how this color is getting darker or whiter? So if I change this again to grayscale and I start playing around with the value, you're gonna see I'm gonna make this whiter or darker. Yes, so basically that's something that we can make or use on this flat fill to random map, so we can have different grayscale values on our tiles. Now to mask our tiles, what we need to do is basically get here a histogram scan. Yes, and set our contrast to maximum. That way, when we start to up the position, we're gonna start to choose different tiles based on the grayscale information we have here. And if we plug this into our opacity node, it's just gonna show us the tiles that we have here on this mask, as you can see. Now, that might have been a lot of information. Are you guys clear with that? Anyone has any kind of question or got lost in the middle, maybe? Yes?
Sorry, one question. Or because of the is different from the slope blur and the direction warp. I'm often unsure which I...
With the slope blur and the directional warp, the difference?
Yes.
So the difference is that one is basically both of them. So one is just a warp, yes. So if I get an image just like this here, in fact, you know what? I'm gonna use exactly the same image. So we have the same image. If I get a warp here, it's just gonna warp, but in a specific direction. So it's going to push everything in the direction that I choose by touching this. Yes, and with the intensity of the intensity map that I'm using. So let's say I use a shape node, yes? And instead of using a square, I use a disk. And I get that into my intensity input. What that's gonna make, it's gonna make a hole in the center based on my mask. So you see how there's a circle in the middle where things stop tiling? That's because I'm warping everything in one specific direction, and I can do it in any direction I want. Now, the slope blur, what it does is different. The slope blur reads our slope input, yes, that would be the image that we get, and it reads the grayscale, and depending on the mode we are using, it's gonna pull inwards or outwards our edges, the edges of our image, yes? So basically, and a way of showing it would be this. I'm gonna make a shape, yes. I'm gonna lower the size, and I'm gonna get this here. So instead of using this, I'm gonna use Gaussian spots. Plug this in, and you see that when I start to increase the intensity, like the edges started to move inwards compared to when it's 0, and they're starting. If I place my 2D viewport in this edge that is going inwards, and then I change the image to the intensity image input I'm using, you're gonna see there's a dot here. So basically the node is following the information from this image to know which parts should it pull the edges inwards or outwards. Now if we change this to max, it's just gonna go the other way around. It's gonna pull outwards. Yes, and it's gonna do it a lot. You can see how it kind of destroys everything. Now, if I do it with blur, it's just gonna make both things at the same time. You can see the difference when I change from one to the other, basically. Now, the samples is basically the quality of the slope blur. You can see here that the more I increase the samples, the better quality it has. So now we have our cracks. We have made our cracks. I don't know if I want to actually add more detail or already close this node, but I think I'm gonna just start to close it. Yes. So let's take a look on how we can close. So if I generate any node here, let's say I do a levels node, you're gonna realize two things when I look at it. First, it's gonna be black because we don't have information in it. But every node in Substance Designer that has a process, yes, has an input and an output. Yes, and it has an input with grayscale or color information and an input with all outputs with color or grayscale information. So in order to generate this new node that we want to create, we need to generate our inputs and outputs. Now we're going to start with the easiest one, that is our output. And the output is going to be at the end of everything we have been building here. So I'm going to create an output. Yes. And right now I'm going to leave this connected here just to showcase what we're seeing here. Yes, so I have my output and I'm going to add an item here. I'm going to change the usage to, let's use height. So this is going to be height. Now I need to change the identifier and the label. So the label is going to be the name that we see here. You see whether it says output in my name. I'm just going to change this to output. I'm just going to put output. No, I'm going to put cracks final. No, cracks result. And you see that it changes. Now I'm going to do the same with my identifier. Yes, and my identifier is usually what we use to call for this node on the if conditions, but we are not going to be seeing that today because it's actually quite more advanced than what I'm showing right now. So now we have our inputs. Now we need to figure out what could our outputs be. Yes, and for that we're gonna be creating a lot of outputs, and we need to be really careful and choose well our nodes and which ones to actually change. So we're gonna go from the beginning to the end. Yes, so first I'm gonna remove this edge detect, pull this one here. So in here I don't want to change anything. Yes, till the auto levels I don't want to change anything, but when I get to my directional warp I do want to change. And what I would want to change is this, the clouds too. So I want to change my intensity input, yes, in case I want to use another map that is not the clouds too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an input grayscale, yes. And if you're going to see that if I plug this in here, the image is going to be black and there's going to be actually no result, and we don't want that. We want an easy way of actually moving forward in what we do. So what we are going to do now is we're going to create a switch node. So a switch node is basically what the name tells us. It's going to be a node that by pressing a switch we're going to change between one map and the other. See? So I'm going to set this to false and plug it here. Yes, and I'm going to tell you later why we are setting this to false. So we have the input and the clouds here, yes? So this is what we're going to be inputting, and this is the default value of this input. So we're going to move forward. So then we have our edge, blur and levels. We're just going to move forward. Yes, we're going to come here and we're going to repeat the same step here. We want exactly to do the same here. We want our node to be actually quite complete and that we don't have to do any kind of change. And here comes the tricky part. Yes, so the idea of making these cracks is that we are able to use this with any kind of pattern we want. So let's say right now we have squares, but let's say we want to use, just because you just felt like, we want to use circles. Yes, we will have to get inside these nodes in order to change that. So again, we're gonna have to make a switch with another input. Yes, and in the false input I'm gonna put this tile generator, and in the true I'm gonna set this to input. There we go. So we're basically choosing everything we have here, and that should be it. Because now if I were to replace this, let's say I had something input here that is not this tile generator, is going to take this and it's going to be running throughout the float field, the random information, and then here. Now I want to change something in here before moving forward, and it's just this. Now the problem with the float field to random color is that it gives different colors, but for some reason it's not picking really the right variation I would like to. So I'm going to use another node from the float field family that is called float field to random grayscale. Yeah. Now you can see the difference, like all of our nodes have this millisecond, that is the time of rendering that our nodes have. Now between these two have 0.3 while this one has 1.12. So basically we're just going higher with this, but really right now it doesn't matter. So we're gonna change this here, yes, just for the sake of it, and voila, we're gonna leave it here. So right now we have all the inputs and outputs that we are going to need, and it is time to actually export our node. And I'm going to show you why. If I create another graph, yes, and I click here on this arrow down, and I get this one from the one that says custom node class, and I drag it here and drop it, I'm going to get my node. And you're going to see that we have everything. Inputs, yes, all the inputs we created, and then here, well, we have all the outputs that the graph already gave us, that is base color, roughness, normal, height, but on the bottom we have ours, the cracks result. So we need to go back, because right now we don't have parameters, we can't change anything. Yes, even if I plug in something in here, let's say I plug in a shape, nothing is going to change, doesn't matter what, because we don't have a way of changing it for here. So we need to expose these parameters. So first I'm gonna delete all of this because I don't need it. Yes, that's the first thing we can do. Second, what we are going to do, yes, is we're going to start to expose parameters from the beginning to the end. And before doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to organize everything right now, right here. Yes, so we have here the edge detect, and I'm going to frame this, and all of this is about the cells pattern. So I'm just going to name this cell pattern generator. So I'm going to start to expose parameters from here, and I'm going to expose only the ones I need, yes? So I'm gonna come here to my tile generator and I'm gonna start with the top part, which are X and Y amount. I think I can do batch expose parameters. So for exposing parameters, you need to look for these 3 lines and the arrow that is pointing below. So you click here, you're gonna have the expose and it's new grab input, and that's alright. But in this case, we're gonna expose batch parameters. That means it's gonna expose all of these parameters together. Yes, and I'm gonna choose which ones. I'm gonna choose X and Y. Yes, and I can't see the name of the rest. So I don't want to change the pattern, nor the input number. I want to, what do I want to change here? Pattern input distribution, here, size. So I want to change size. Yes, it's gonna be basically this one, or scale. No, size no. We're gonna do scale here, this one. We don't want any random position or any random rotation right now because it's already random. And maybe random, luminance random. That's pretty much all of it that we're gonna get. So I'm gonna hit OK. Yes, and you're gonna see that all of them are gonna stay on blue. Now, if you want to see where these parameters went, you need to double click on the background, and you're gonna see here that you have all your parameters. Yes, X amount, Y amount, size, color. Yeah, so I'm gonna pull this downwards because we're not gonna see that. I'm gonna change this to preview to see how they actually look. So as we can see right now, this is actually quite disorganized. Before actually keep on promoting parameters, what I'm going to do is I'm going to organize this from my parameters tab. So I'm going to get this here, and I'm going to open my X amount, and I'm going to call this just cells X amount, and I'm going to change this to X amount as well. Now, as you can see, yes, here we have a group. Yes, right here. So we're gonna go here to our frame, and we're gonna copy the name of our group, to double click, and I'm gonna create a new group by just doing this. That's all I had to do, just write the name. Now if I go to the next one, yes, and I set this here, you're gonna see I have other groups, cell pattern generator. Great. So I'm gonna do the same for the rest. Yes, I'm gonna set everything inside the same group, and if I go now to my preview, you're gonna see that you only have one group and you have everything: cell X amount, Y amount, scale, luminance random. So I'm gonna go back to parameters and start to actually name everything correctly. Perfect. I'm gonna do one by one. Great. So now if I go back here and I see I have cells X amount, cells Y amount, cells scale, cells luminance random. I missed a space here, so let's get back to this. Great. There we go. So I have everything set here. Yeah. So this is my first group that is all about cells, but there's something we are missing here. Yes, and it's not the distance, not the direction. We're going to do the histogram. So we're gonna do a single expose. So we're going to expose this single parameter because it's the only thing we want. So we're going to expose this as new graph input, and we're going to get this one. So what we're going to do this is we're going to put cells tiling, or let's set this as maximum tiling. Yes. And again, we're going to copy this here and here, and I'm going to choose my group, and I'm going to hit OK. Yeah. So I'm gonna get back here to my preview. I'm gonna pull this up so I can show you something. So right now we can't change anything from here. Yes, from our actual node. We have to double click here backwards and go to parameters, and we need to look for the right parameter, which is this one. Now the thing with this parameter is that we have the default value, yes, here. So if I increase this, it's gonna have a change, but after a time it's not going to have any kind of change. So you can see that from more or less from 0.5 we don't have anything else to add, basically. Now I could actually cap this, so I can cap this value. In fact, I'm going to give it 0.6 as a maximum value. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to set this here, maximum value 0.6, and minimum value it's going to be 0.1. So now if I want to go higher than 0.6, I'm not going to be able. If I want to go lower than 0.1, I'm not going to be able as well. Yes? And that's something really nice to have. And if we go to my preview, cells maximum tiling, you're gonna see that we have this as well. Now, first in my parameters, I have cells X amount, Y amount, scale, and luminance random, and at the bottom I have maximum tiling. So I want this to be on the top. So I'm gonna go back to parameters. Yes, I'm gonna put my mouse in this position in here. Gonna left click and pull it up. And that's basically the order we have. Yes. Now we're going to move forward to the directional warp. So now we're going to have to start a small kind of problems here with the naming, but we're going to expose the intensity. So I'm going to set this as directional warp intensity. Yes. And I'm going to add it to the same group because we are still in the same group. And so, no, sorry. Directional warp angle. I'm going to remove the middle part and choose the right group again. So we have everything but our switch. Yes, and basically this is the easiest part because it's more easier than the rest we have seen. The only thing we have to do is click here, expose as new input, and here the trick is what name we want to use. Oh, sorry, just click enter with my other hand. Sorry, it was a reflex. So I'm gonna get to my parameters here, or wait, can I do Control C? Yes, I can do Control C. So if I go here, there shouldn't be any kind of switch anymore, isn't it? No, nothing. So if I go here, yes, and expose this, so I need to use, yes, a specific name, so it's easier not only for me but for someone else to actually identify, yes, what we are going to be inputting here. Yes, so I'm again here on parameters and I have my switch, I have my input and my cloud suit. So I need to use a really nice label for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this as custom directional, or I'm going to put just dir warp all together map. So people will know that this is a custom directional warp map. Yes, and I'm going to set the default the default as false. So my cloud suit is going to be always, yes, my default. And if someone wants to change, they only need to click on the button. Now I forgot to change the group here. There we go. And now if I save this and I go back to the other graph, here we have our node, and you can see right now that we have all our inputs. And if I want to, what I can do basically is change this, use a Perlin noise maybe, and I forgot about something. So we're gonna go back, and I forgot to change the name of my input right now. So I'm gonna go here, copy this, go to my input, and change the identifier, yes, and the label. So now, yes, if I go back to my other substance graph, and I go in, I'm gonna have the right name for everything I need. So I'm gonna have this here, and you're gonna see that between one and the other, there's quite a difference. Like this one is more wavy, where the clouds too, it's a little bit more like sharp or edge detailed. In case you want a second directional warp, yes, you can add it. You might not just need to figure out how to do it. So going back to our node, we already did the cells pattern generator. Now we need to go to the next step, which is our cracks creation. So we're gonna add a frame and we're gonna set this to cracks. Yes, and we're gonna first expose our edge width, just like it is. We're gonna add cracks here only. We're gonna set a new group that is called crack. Edge roundness, yes. Cracks, edge roundness. Group is gonna be cracks. Let's do it cracks, because it should be more than one. Yes, go here. There we go. And here we want to set this to cracks detail custom map. Yes, I'm repeating exactly the same process I did before. I forgot to add the group, so I'm gonna go back here and set this to cracks. So I have everything here. Great. So now, if you want, you could basically change this, but I'm not sure about it. Like, I'm not sure I want to change this right now. What I do need to change that I'm realizing about now is that it's the resolution of our images. So every image has a bitmap. You can see it right here on my output format. It says 8 bits. Now, most of the nodes are basically set to the parent, meaning that the graph has its own bits per channel, and all the nodes are going to have exactly the same. But when you create your own outputs, this is not as expected. You see that here it says L8, that means it has 8 bits. Now the image below has 16 bits. But when we have input this one to the switch changed to 8 bits, and that makes that our details are of lower quality because the image has less bits. So what we need to do is go to our inputs and outputs actually, and change the format to absolute. Yes, you click on this icon like this one, but right here it wasn't relative to input. I just set this to absolute. I changed this to 16 bits, and now everything is going to be 16 bits. I'm gonna do the same right now for every single node. Yes, I'm gonna do this one for here, and well, this one is 16, so that's nice. Now I think I'm not missing anything else. Now if I go to my slow blur, there's gonna be nice information. Now it caught my attention because my slow blur was looking like this, and it was actually quite weird. That's why I realized that I had like really low bits per channel. Use 16, you don't need anymore. Okay, so I'm not gonna touch my slow blur right now. I'm just gonna leave it like that because I know I use it always at that intensity. If I need to use it later, then I can get in and change it. So from my vector warp, I'm not gonna change anything, not the intensity. I don't wanna change the intensity. A random set of this parameter, we are not going to change it as well. What we are going to do is here, we are gonna change our main shape or main pattern. I'm gonna set this as main pattern level. Yes, so we have our main pattern, and I'm gonna come here and set this to main pattern costume. Yes, it's okay. And I don't have any group, so I'm just gonna create a main pattern. And now I'm gonna start to expose this. But this one is gonna go directly to the cracks, and I'm gonna set cracks amount, basically, so we can have everything. Now, yes, we do have, I think, exposed all the parameters we needed, and the idea again of this node is to basically have something that we can input anything we want, and this will allow us to basically create the details by itself, without us having to start again from zero and basically do everything from scratch. So right now, let's say I want to make some bricks. So I'm gonna go here to my tile sampler, yes, and I'm just gonna make some bricks. It's not so much. I'm gonna make some offsets by 0.5, increase a little bit the yes to 1.2. Maybe a little bit more now. I'm gonna just go to scale. Oh. And scale this a little bit. And now we can scale this up. Something like this. So I'm gonna input into my main pattern. And if everything is working all right, if I change to a custom main pattern, my cracks should be everywhere, and they are. But I forgot about something. Yeah, so we're gonna have to go back. And what I was forgetting was this one, the cracks intensity effect. So I'm gonna get this and expose it, and cracks intensity. I'm gonna use this here. Let's set this to cracks. I'm gonna go to my parameters. I'm gonna set my crack intensity on top of everything. This one here, and it should be right now. Just save this and come back. I should have my cracks intensity around here, so I can choose more or less intensity. So again, if I change these parameters, this one to 5, just because I like having a really strong normal intensity. Remove this one and create a AO. 16 samples, just 10 centimeters of height. I plug this in. I'm gonna lower just this. I should have basically my cracks and I can control them as much as I want. So basically right now let's try to make a little bit of this. So warp intensity, let's lower it down a little bit, we don't want that much. I'm gonna do this 40 by 40. Width, I'm gonna lower this to 1 or even more, 0.08. There we go. So maximum tiling, I'm gonna lower it as much as I can. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna go back again and lower this. So you can see that now I'm starting to get my cracks as I wanted to. Now I see this the directional warp should be a little bit more. Where was it? Here, way too much. Back to 10. Can do this like this, and I can go here to random seed just to affect every random parameter as I want to. And I can lower the amount of cracks. So basically now I have my own crack generator for this node. So some nodes, when building your own cracks, yes, I just built this one really quick for you guys. But when you build your own nodes, you need to be sure that you have everything you need in that node. Now, of course, as long as you keep on using that node and you keep working on that node, what's going to happen is that you're going to realize there's just more things that is missing on your node. So you're going to go back to the node and you're going to try to actually make a change on it, yes, to make this more usable for you. Like, for example, right now, I know, like, I just realized, for example, that I'm using, where is this? Edge width, yes, I have it. If I put it on 0.1, that should be the actual minimum size of my cracks. There's still a lot of space between, and that's because I haven't exposed the parameters for the blur and the levels, yes, which are actually making my cracks more bigger or sharper. But in fact, in this case, I'm not seeing that happening, basically. So it should actually be alright. And maybe it was something about this cracks intensity. Yeah, it was something about this. Perfect. So now I have my cracks there. So does anyone has any kind of question so far, guys? Anything in particular you might want to add?
I want to share something.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. I used to make cracks, but I didn't bring my notes with myself, so I just show you the picture of it. Wait.
Yeah, you can share it.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see.
Sorry, it's uploading. Oh, okay.
Yes, I see them.
Can you see it?
Yes,
okay,
I can.
So I used to make this kind of cracks, but it has like very jaggedy result. But when I blur it, I lose so many details on it. Do you have any like blurring techniques so I don't have to like losing a lot of?
It depends on what you want to build. Yes. This is something actually quite normal, and the reason for this is because most of the times when people are starting with Substance Designer, they see, let's say, I'm just gonna copy this slow blur here. Yeah, so what is giving you the edge details are the slow blur, and they think that the lowest value they can go is, let's say, 0.1, but that's not true. You can really go lower than that. Yes, 0.05. So sometimes you can have the detail you want without having, yes, or using as much strength as you were having before. You can see now that I lowered this and I have some edge detail, but it's not as strong as before. It's not as sharp as before, but it's still there. So it's not only something about blurring, yes, your detail, it's about what intensity are you using with it, yes? And also what kind of map you're using, because usually what people do in these cases is if they want to make a change here, let's say I'm gonna pull this backwards, and you feel this is too strong, what you are going to do, you're gonna blur your slow blur. That means you're gonna add the slow blur here. And that kills your overall cracks, and you don't want to do that. What you want to blur is the intensities map, Yes. So if I blur my intensity map, you're gonna see that the result now is it's lower. It's not as strong. See how I go on blurring this and it starts to shape and it feels a little more liquid right now. But if I come here and change the, oh sorry, it was I was changing the wrong one. If I go to my blur and start increasing the intensity, you're gonna see that this is going to change a lot. Let's change this back to 1. And I'm gonna lower my intensity. You're gonna see how this looks. It's around here. But if I start to increase my intensity, I'm not losing any detail, but I'm really softening it out. So sometimes it's not about any kind of technique, it's about knowing where you have to actually make a change on the node composition you have. Because many people, again, they think that blurring something is actually lowering the detail when in fact you can do a lot of things in order to lower your details. You can lower the intensity of where you're applying the detail, you can lower or increase the scale of the map. Let's say I want to do exactly the same, but instead of using a Clouds 2, I'm gonna use Gaussian spots 1. Yes, and I set this into slope. You're gonna see this result, and maybe I want a different result. So if by scaling I can get that result, or upscaling what I have. Yeah, so again, it's gonna depend a lot, and sometimes you can combine them, or let's say you can even blur them. You can even like blend them really good. Let's make something crazy here. Let's just go here with a blend, combine both of them. Yes, there's not gonna be a difference, but if I add a purling here, which has a lot of like variation, and set it to opacity, now there's gonna be a variation between this node and this other node, where things meet in the middle thanks to my purling noise. So now if I plug this in here, save it, and go back to my substance graph, my cracks should be a little bit more interesting or softer than they were before. So you can see that now they have way more detail compared to before, and the detail is not as strong as one would think, you know? Look at this. Doesn't this feel a little bit more than like cracks than before?
Yeah, this one is a lot more like detail.
Yes.
I think I should play with many notes variation. Okay. That's
Yes, basically this is like if you guys are trying to learn Substance Designer, this is one of the best advice I can give you. Explore and play around. Like there's not a specific math equation for everything you want to do. It's more about trying to explore more and learn what works and what it doesn't work, because it usually happens a lot that maybe you go and you see a tutorial or you see a class like this, yes, and you see that for me, in order to make a sales generator, yes, I do this. This is my way of doing it. This is how I learned to do it. Now there's different ways of actually doing it. This is not the only way of doing it. So if you set yourselves to explore different nodes and different results, you're gonna get better results. For example, there's a lot of people that when it comes to edge detect, for example, they usually do the same. They go here, they go slow blur, they go Clouds 2, they do this, they set really low value, they set this to mean, and that's it. That's their edge detect. That's all they did to get their edge detail. Sorry, not edge detail. That's not actually making it's not gonna make this happen, because we don't want only to make a change in a specific part. We wanna make art. We wanna combine different things of our artwork on our progress to make something artistic, and that means that we need to learn when we need to do have strong details on one thing and soft details in another one, or when we are going to work more with our own composition than anything else. So part of this is also, part of learning Substance Designer basically is this as well, trying to learn to explore yourself, like try different nodes, try blending different things, but just don't do it just because you want to. Do it because you are thinking about it. Think about, like, try something and see if it gives you a result that you like or that it might be useful, and then try to combine them in different ways. For example, for this one in particular, what I did, yes, I used the Gaussian spots, because I knew it was going to give me areas where I'm gonna have, like, let's say, like less white areas and a more like sharp gradient. And then I used the slow blur just to give more like kind of like this rock shape that we can achieve with the slow blur at Clouds 2. And I combined it with an already really strong, so I can make this detail. So basically it's like multiplying one with each other. So I have a better detail now. So it's about not only about exploring, it's about why you are exploring in that direction and what you have in your mind when trying to do that. Yeah? Is the documentation the best place to review how various nodes are meant to work? Imam? So I think that the documentation is the best place to start, not the only place you have to do. So if you want to actually explore and get to know more nodes, do more things, then I would recommend that you get into actually the documentation and see what each node does, because it's also going to help you know what you want to do. Like before, I didn't know, like when I started to learn how to design it, I really didn't know what the slope blur node did. So I only use it for edge details. Now I use that node to do a lot of things, not only edge details. And that was because there was a moment where I got inside the documentation, I read what it did, and I say, okay, so it does this, so I can use it to do this, and this. So don't try just to figure out which nodes go together to get a result. Try to figure out what does each node do, yes, in order to then use it as you want to create the result you need. Yeah, that would be one of the best advice I can give you right now on Substance Designer and how to learn it. So, guys, is there anything else specific you want to work on today that is related to what we have seen, or any kind of other question you might have for yourself before we close this? I still have 1 hour free to keep on with this class, but I really don't want to waste your time unless we have something specific to talk about.
How about rocks? I mean, make a.
Okay, we can talk about rocks. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, because I can't see his full name. And try using your full name always on the Discord server, because there's also, like, just in case you don't know, there's a lot of professional artists going around, and it's always nice to see your full names, because if we want to recommend you for any kinds of studios or so on, we know your full name, and we can do that to recommend you on LinkedIn and so on. I'm happy that it was useful for you, and you can always use the work in progress channels we have here to just get some feedback on what you're working here. Mike has been using it a lot, you can see, and well, Kai has recently joined us. I haven't made the announcement yet, but he has joined us as a mentor as well. Yes, we can work on paints as well. And yes, a specific question about high-pass grayscale. How does it work? So high-pass grayscale, yes, I think we talked about this in last class, but I think you weren't here, so let's go around it. So high-pass grayscale, like, in order to make a really quick definition for it, it just removes the contrast. See how right now everything looks or feels at the same level, but if I pull this backwards, it just goes to its normal state. So it's trying to remove all the darkest areas of your material. See how right now we really don't have that much dark area? That's the overall of what it's doing. And it allows us to create new details. Like, for example, if we get the levels and pull the blacks down, yes, you have this kind of new details that can be used in other places as well. So going back to here. Okay, so let's see. I know we talk about rock so far, we talk about veins so far. That's two things we need to do. So if you want to accentuate smaller details, it really depends on what kind of detail. Let's say it's a detail related more to the kind of like dots, noises, and so on. Then when you want to do that, what I would recommend is to actually blur a little bit the shape and then use a level just to build a better shape. That's usually what I do. For example, I'm going to make it here. Yes, that's something I do always with my shapes. Yes, so for example, I get here a blur. There we go. In this case, I'm going to do 0.2. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the levels. And I pull my blacks in and my grays out. Yeah, something like this. And I'm going to plug my levels here. And now you're going to see that I have like a sharper edge, or let's say a small bevel on the edge, which is reflecting more light. And I can use this intensity just to keep on growing that. But again, I'm going to have to move around the levels to make different shapes and so on. That's something you can do to actually achieve that kind of sharpness. So Geo usually make materials by making shapes and putting them into tile generators, but sometimes I can't use Flatel because of overlap. Is there a better word for or workaround for this? So it really depends on what you're working. The thing with tile generator and making your own shapes is that it has a little bit of complexity on trying to, you know, make the node overlap, and it depends at the end on the shape. Sometimes it's not about the shape we made, it's about how we blend the shapes. Yes. So let's say if I wanted to do with this specific node, well, I think I know what you could do. Actually, you could do what I just did. You could use blur and levels just to grab the shape and shrink it, but give it a specific more bevel. And that way you're gonna also have more space between the edges, so they won't be overlapping. But again, it depends a lot on what you're working on. Are you working on tiles, bricks, or are you working on surfaces more like, for example, let's say concrete or things like that, where it's definitely you're not gonna be able to use the flat fill. You're talking about the so I'm gonna give you another advice on that one, Gio. Look at this. So I think, so let's say, yes, you are making your lava. I'm just gonna make your paneling noise here, clouds 2. Yes, I'm gonna do a non-uniform blur. There we go, something more like this. I really don't want, let's just go full quality. I don't care right now. Do a blend, do the copy by half, and do this. More or less. And maybe use a multiply here. Now let's just use a copy. Right, make it more. And now let's use a directional warp. Let's use 50. Try use the levels. No, let's remove the levels for now. Let's place this here. Oh. And now let's use a multi-directional warp. So let's say you want this to be made with a vector warp or vector warp. What usually happens is that you will need to use, or what people think is that you need to use a flat fill. But in this case, you don't need to. What you can do basically is, and really silly, you can turn this into a gradient map. And the output of the gradient map is a color. So I can take this to a vector morph, plug this in, and look at this. I can now make something like, I can make snow even here. So if someone was actually looking how to make snow, I accidentally make it. Or not all together, but just the start of it. Yes, but look at how you can actually make your shapes here. I can use a vector warp, rescale. It's gonna work different, as you can see. So again, it really depends on what you're working. So you don't need to use specifically the flat fill. You can use any kind of color input. Yes. Yeah, these are two really amazing notes that you should always have at hand when you're trying to make organic shapes and so on. Does edge damage generator work similar to the crack generator you just showed? I have no clue. I will have to get inside the node to actually see that, and it's mainly made with code. So Bedan, you're asking how long does that usually take in game development environment or in arts industry to make a material, and how it varies depending on the material. So again, that's really depends on the studio. I don't think we have talked about this, but we're gonna start to make some content with Kai about this, but it really depends on the studio. So every studio works different. For example, in the studios I've worked before, I use only Substance Designer. So using Substance Designer makes the material like, it's a little bit harder to make because it depends how many times you have been using it, or how many times you have worked with it. For example, there's some kind of materials I'm really fast with, and even if I haven't made them for a while, I'm gonna be still sharp at it because I have done it like several times, like hundreds of times. But there are other materials, like for example, some metal surfaces, where I'm really bad at it. I'm not bad because I'm just bad at it. I'm bad at it because I haven't practiced enough, or I didn't have much time at work to work with it. So that happens a lot. But when on other surfaces, I'm a little more proficient because I have more practice. Now, when it comes on the times they give you to make something, it really depends on the studio. So for example, on other studios, let's say for example EA, I know they use a lot of photoscan data. So basically they do photogrammetry, and that has a different timing on how much time does it take to make a material, because they need to do a trouble, they need to scan everything. But when they are back, the process of actually making a photoscan material is actually quite fast, and faster than in Substance Designer. Yes, so it's gonna depend a lot, but usually when you're working in the studio, they are going to ask you to make between 1 to 2 materials per day. Again, it depends on what the studio is actually focusing around. If they are going to focus about quality rather on the actual amount of things you make, then most probably you're going to be doing less amount of material but with higher quality. Materials. I suppose I have to make a body ground. How would I start usually when it comes to replicating the shades, big to small, if that makes sense? So that's something we would need to make a whole chapter about it, Mudra. So I have a kind of a law when it comes to these things. So the reason why it's a little bit confusing to actually know where to start is because there's a way in which we read our surfaces and materials. So one of the things that actually makes our materials really good is depth. Yes, so if I go here to ArtStation, for example, I'm just going to look for, let's see if I have someone around here. No. So I'm gonna go to my portfolio. I have a material here that I don't like and I need to take down, that is this one. Yes. And the thing is that most of people will actually start by doing the rocks. Yes, the rocks that you have here. In fact, in my case, I started with that. And the problem with starting with rocks is that you don't know how it's gonna look at the end, because you don't have a background. So you need a background for it, yes? So in order to have a background, you need to start first with the dirt. So you need to start with a specific shape maybe, or a surface that is at the bottom, and then you start to add details step by step. You focus a little bit on dirt, then on the small rocks, bigger rocks, and you go from what is underneath of the bottom of your material to the highest point of your material, yes? So again, if I'm making something like this, the first thing I'm gonna do is dirt. The second thing I'm gonna do is gonna be rocks, and I'm gonna start with smaller rocks because I want them to be, because on the range of my scale, of my height scale, they're the second thing that are around there. And thirdly, I'm gonna go for my grass. That is, in this case, I don't remember if I did or if it is photoscanned. I can't remember right now. So it's going to depend on what kind of material you choose and how it's layered on your reference. Hey Nico, what part of the node you want to see? Do you want to see the node I created or the one I just used, the directional verb? Oh, the last section, you mean this one, isn't it? So this is basically what I have here is a switch. Yes, so I'm changing between a tile generator I'm using just to have a default and the input of the new shape I want to get. Then I divide this into a flat fill to get my flat fill to random color for my vector warp, and my flat fill to random scale with my histogram scan, yes, to get this part. You know what? In fact, I'm gonna send you a huge screen of all of these parts, so you have it. Was that what you were asking for, Nico? You're welcome, Iman. I'll see you next week. So let's see. Hamid. There we go. Also, is there a way that save the parameter that needs change in Unreal Engine, therefore have more variation instead making new texture? So I haven't used exposing parameters in Unreal for a while. 5 years ago, when I started with Substance Designer, that was more or less when it's starting to happen, and it was a thing at the moment, but I never see any kind of update so far. It's not really, let's say, it's not really useful. It's a little slow as far as I know. If you've seen that it's actually, right now it's a little bit better, then let me know and I might take a look into it later. Okay, how to approach complex shape. Okay, that's something else we have to see. So let's go for different alternatives. So, Rahul, that question is really like, I don't think that's gonna change anything at all. So I know a lot of people really don't like AI right now nowadays, but the reality is that we actually have no matter of choice in this, or let's say decision. Like, if the studios choose to keep on with that, you're gonna have to keep on working on that. Now, if you don't want to keep on using Adobe because they are used or save things in Adobe, that's okay. You can do it. You can still save your things on your own PC. But if things keep on going on this direction and the industry starts to use more AI, I think we will have to get used to it. Unfortunately, we will have to get used to it. I don't have any like specific opinions about it. It's a little bit more political right now because I don't have any kind of proofs to show anything. But I think it's actually quite interesting, and it will be really amazing to see AI being like a tool more than replacing us. So, complex shapes. When you're talking about complex shapes, is there any complex shape you might want to talk about? Guys, Vedant and Nico? Let's see if I have something in particular. So, let me look for some specific shape. Oh, those ones. Sorry, guys. I understand something different. Yes. Let me send you a screenshot and I explain this again. So this is basically the following, and this is also useful, Mudra, for when you want to actually get into making some dirt or any kind of this, is when I try to make my floors, yes, or grounds, I usually start by making something really organic. Yes, and as we are talking about dirt or an organic surface that has a lot of up and downs in our height, I usually do use something that has a little bit of noise, like this, for example. Yes, you can see. In fact, this looks a little bit more like water right now. Then I use something that again is softened and it has a little more variation on the height, like the purling noise in this case, that I can still scale, and I'm gonna make more shapes. As you can see, look at this. This looks weird. I don't know the explanation of this, but this looks like some kind of goo, I would say. If I keep on typing, is this gonna get worse? It's gonna get worse. Oh my god, what the hell is this? What have I created? Okay, this is weird. Yeah, basically shampoo. So yes, it's actually quite versatile. This is something I really love about Substance Designer. It's actually quite versatile. Now, I've seen you guys have written down some veins. I'm gonna go back to this. So basically, you have all your setup for veins right now. So this could actually convert to veins as well. Like, this is how you make veins, like no kidding around. The only thing I would do different is maybe I would come here with a bevel and use 0.1, something like this, smooth this a little bit, and then use a levels. Yes, and something like this, and you already have your veins. Now, it's going to depend on what veins you're trying to do, what we have in the middle. But again, veins, roots, cracks, they all start with the same thing with this, because you want something to be perceivable on the tiles. So making something like this is actually really powerful, because it's going to allow all of these that you're seeing right here to be made, and it feels already quite organic. So I don't think that veins are going to be quite of a big challenge for you. But if you're using veins to, I don't know, for flesh, like for example, one of my latest materials, well, not latest, one of my first materials, it was my first material, like this one, I think that your biggest challenge is not gonna be the actual veins, it's gonna be more like the flesh itself. Yes, that's something I found really difficult to make. In fact, I really miss doing these kinds of materials, so I might get to making something really weird and disgusting soon. That's the thing. Veins don't have, so it depends on the shape that you're using below. So you see here that these veins, they don't have a specific direction. See that, like, it's just going around here and here, and it goes back and forward. And if I go to my mid, it's just moving everywhere. So the direction it's going to depend on the surface the veins is actually working for. Yes, so let's say, or wait, give me 2 seconds. I have something that I was working today with Sam. So today with Sam, we were working on this on her mentorship. So I'm mentoring here on how to make materials. Basically, it's a mentorship on how you guys actually become material artists. So if you see this here, this top part, it has kind of like a curve, see? See, like this has kind of like a curve, and then we have the rest of the things on top, and everything is following. If I look this in this direction, you see this is a line that is like this mask here, this subtraction here is just following the curve of our shape. Now, in order to do that, you only need to multiply one from the other. In this case, what I did, yes, I use, where it is, where they would use it. So I made an overall shape, yes, the overall gradient of all of this piece, yes, that you can find here. Yes, this is like completely white, and I think it's going to be more useful if I show this in a normal. Let's see. And I subtracted, let me pull this here. So I subtracted this area with a gradient I have here. Yes, it's more or less around here. So what I do in order to make my shapes to follow something that is, or a path that is below us, what I do is I multiply the result, yes, as I show here. Yes, I multiply it by the shape I have. So this has a gradient. If I multiply these ornaments by the gradient, my ornaments are gonna follow up the same height direction that the rest. If I remove it, they're going to look really weird, as you can see here. Was that what you were going for, Vedant? Perfect. Now, there's something else about direction that is on tile samplers. Yes, you can actually use tile samplers to generate direction on your patterns as well. But in order to do that, we will have to do another class because it's a little way more complex. And to be honest, I quite not remember how it works, so I'll have to take a look on that. But Martin also knows a lot about it, and he has been doing a lot of material with that as well. Let's have a class that talks about making roughness for interesting materials, like this flesh or even snow, sand, for the matter. I know for metal, usually roughness is not important. No, in fact, for metal surfaces, roughness is really important. Roughness is gonna make the huge difference on metal surfaces. Now, next week, guys, for those who don't know, on the actual challenge, we're gonna have a class like this one, but the class is gonna be Kai or me. We're gonna have to talk between each other, and we're gonna try to figure out which of us is going to be making a specific material from the challenge. So you're going to see us work on the material, yes, but the idea is that you don't. I mean, you're not gonna have the class recorded. It's just a way to actually provide feedback or help you on your material and to give you a small showcase of how to actually start your material in these cases. Which day would you think that would be a better time for it? Would you say Tuesday is a really nice day to have like another of these classes, but for the challenge, like being specific about the challenge? Because I'm trying to see which day we can actually gather to make these, and the idea is for you to be actually there. So if you can't be there, the class isn't gonna be worth it. And yes, Vedant, you can send me a render. I'm waiting for Rampo and Vedant. The thing is that I want you to keep doing the free classes plus adding just the classes for the challenge. Like this one to be you for learning, and the challenge classes to be me helping you on your materials for your challenge, basically. That's why I wanted to see if we can have 2 days for that. Because in one same day I can't do 2 classes because I need to work as well. The timing for next week, I can change the timing. It could be like earlier. I don't have a problem. We can do 1 to 2 hours earlier. There's actually no problem at all. No, I can't do that, Rahul, because I'm still having my 8-hour job. So if I have to do 4 hours of classes, I can't do any mentorship. I can't do content for you. So I need to spread things a little bit more thinner to have more time and to keep my job as well. That's why I don't do usually the same day. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna do it on Wednesday. That's great. So if you want to be for the next class on Wednesday, just leave me your mails, yes, on this chat. Leave me if you're comfortable with it. If not, you can just send it to me for DMs for a little more privacy, so I can send you then the invitation for that class as well. And I'm gonna set the event on Discord as well. I'm gonna help you right now, Vedant, with the render. I think I'm good with these two. Sorry, Rajul. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm from another country and I speak Spanish as well, so it's a little bit harder for me.